You know, I honestly don't have to give you the opportunity to say any last words. You really ought to thank me. The pistol waved in my face for a few seconds before lowering. I spat on the ground in front of the serial killer, then grimaced from the effort, fire erupting through my gut. Now that wasn't very neighborly of you, Jackson sneered. And I suppose cutting people up is? I groaned. The world started to grow fuzzy for a second. Blackness began creeping in from the edges. I stared at the pistol in front of me, pulling myself back to consciousness. Only if they have good taste. Get it? Good taste? He said with a laugh. His face went from a mask of humor to a poisonous sneer real quick. Bah! You cops are all the same. No fun. I felt something punch through my thigh first, before I heard the gun go off. My body reacted quickly after, the pain flaming up from my leg. Son of a... I cried, moving my hand from the wound on my stomach to the new one in my leg. Do you really want your last words to be son of a? Jackson asked with genuine curiosity. I figured you'd want to say goodbye to your wife or son. Maybe to that kid you play ball with occasionally on Saturdays with your boy. Jackson's handsome face came into focus for a second as he leaned down close. I could see his soft brown hair and green eyes. Whisper it to me. Right here in my ear, he said. I'll make sure they'd get it. Don't worry. You know you can count on me. Right, I cried out, then gasped for a second. Are you still going to use that Remington typewriter? My hand was shaking just a bit as I gripped my stomach, then my leg. I finally relaxed and leaned back, conserving my energy. You finally got the model right, huh? He said with venom. How many women did it take you to finally figure that out? 5? 10? My count so far is 42, so you must have taken a lot. Well, I was brought on the case for... Then the world went black for a second, then swam back into focus. 4 months ago, I cried. Took me your second letter, though. Guess I'll just have to do what all the other killers do and resort to magazine letters, he said with a frown. Damn shame. There's no style in that. Weird choice of last words, though, he said, pointing that revolver back in my face. Serial number S88481995, I shouted. This made him pause for a second, dropping the pistol out of my face. Now, how did you figure that out? He asked. I squinted hard to bring the room back into focus. There was water stains in that old apartment from where the pipes had been leaking. The walls had been painted over and over again, leaving a thick layer of white latex over them. I knew there was carpeting under me that had one time been gray but probably was now darkened with my blood. What a way to go, shot to death in an abandoned apartment in the Dead Lights district. I asked you a question. It's rude not to answer, he said, pointing the gun at my face. I'm already dying, I said, staring up at the ceiling. It does no good to threaten to kill me faster. You know what? You're right. A flame danced in my face for a second before he flicked the lighter out. How about I set that hair of yours on fire? You won't have to worry about it turning white. I sighed, then took a struggling breath. Okay, I replied. The fire in my belly was raging now, comparable only to the fire in my leg. It was getting colder as well. You see, each typewriter has a unique typeface. The flaws in it are like a fingerprint. Go on, I'm listening, he said, intrigued by my reasoning. Well, that typewriter was linked to a counterfeiting case years ago, I said. The world swam again, zooming out for a second. Just a little bit longer. Just a little bit longer. It slowly came back into focus. You don't look so good, he said, finally standing up. You know what? That was some mighty fine police work. He put his gun up for a second and clapped 3 slow claps. Bravo! Here, consider this a retirement for such fine work. The weapon came down and pressed cool against my forehead. You used a different machine for number 8 through 12, I said quickly. Well, as quickly as I could, anyway. This intrigued the serial killer for just enough that he picked the gun back up and threw it over his shoulder. Well, then, that's very good police work, he smiled. What did I use? It was a Remington as well. Same model, 2 years newer, I grunted out. Very good, he said, clapping again. And your name is Reginald, I said, still looking up. What? He asked now, shocked for the first time. Careful to burn off fingerprints. Careful to torch bodies, I said, trying to keep my statement short. But your typewriter made it easier to track where you started. We have the original apartment you killed Sandra Chase in. You can't, he said, now pointing the weapon back at me. I closed my eyes for a second until I heard the sweetest sound I've ever heard in my life. The distant sound of sirens. Jackson looked out the window for a second, glancing down. I could hear the sound of a bullhorn shouting at the building, but I couldn't quite make out what they said. How did you? He asked, glancing back down out the window into the parking lot below. How did they? He asked, looking at me. I smiled slightly. I even pulled your cell phone off of you. How did they find me? He shouted this time, glaring at me. You're not as careful as you think, I said. They'll be climbing up the stairs any second now. They will break down the door, and when they do, they'll take you. He glanced down at me. They'll never take me alive, he said, glancing up at the door. I moved my hand towards my back now, slowly, towards the small pistol I had there as he stared at the door. When he looked back down at me, I stopped. How did they find me? He shouted now in desperation. Oh, come now, I grunted in pain. They know your name, Reginald. They tracked. My phone. His face fell at the thought. He stared out the window, down at the lot below again. There's more cars coming. Looks like this will be a spectacular finish to a wonderful career. Don't you think? He said. He turned around to see a .45 caliber pistol staring back at him. I gave the only answer I could. I pulled the trigger as fast as possible, aiming every shot I could at him. The window behind him blew out, raining shards of glass on the faded asphalt below. Shock and pain shot across his face as he tumbled backwards out of it. Won't be that special, I struggled out, staring back up at the ceiling. The world started to fade out again as the door to the old apartment flew inward. Holy shit! Someone shouted at a distance as the world finally faded to black. Hi, this is Lou, the writer and recorder of these little stories you hear. This particular one I do enjoy because of the ambiguous ending. I prefer a happy ending. I like to think the cop lived and that he went on to have a much better, albeit more boring, career. But it's ambiguous. That's what's great about it. You get to fill in the blank. The ending is what you want it to be on these particular stories. So maybe in your vision, he doesn't become. Maybe he dies. Maybe he becomes a werewolf. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. I may do that as a story later. But I do appreciate you hanging out. And if you enjoyed this story, I do it twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. All you have to do is hit the red subscribe button. All you have to do is click that little bell, and you'll be notified every time one of these stories come out. You'll get to hear great entertaining stories for free, and if enough of you do it, YouTube will deem me worthy to finally be paid for this stuff, which would be nice. So I do appreciate you hanging out, and hopefully you have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you in the next one. And happy Halloween. Scary story coming next time.